What's up, everybody? Welcome into the F6 Football Podcast. Cam Copeland here, as always, with Alex Roglin. And we know we'll get ahead of it right now. We are coming to you a bit later in the week. Once again, we are recording this on Friday night. But honestly, Alex, I can't think of anything better to do late on a Friday evening. Our Alex's voice is all recovered. We are healthy and good to go. So I'm excited to be back on, even though it is a bit later in the week. How are you doing, my friend?
That was an awesome welcome at the beginning, Cam. That was great. So I'm doing great. My voice is back, and I am glad to be using it to talk about football. So, and as Cam mentioned, we appreciate everyone's flexibility. We try to be as consistent as we can, but we also have full-time jobs, and there's a lot of other things going on in our lives. So, we love talking football. We're happy to be here to talk football. Just got to balance it out with family and moving and all kinds of different stuff going on. But let's jump right into it. What an exciting week! I mean, we're definitely officially past halfway now, right?
Yep, going into week 10.
Yeah, I know it's weird with 17 games now, but either way, we're past halfway. And man, I can't believe the season already halfway over, and we're already starting to talk seriously about playoff seeding, which is just I can't believe that,
Yeah, geez, man, it's flying by, and I'm so deep in the weeds of the NFL draft right now. I keep checking Tankathon for draft orders, seeing updated standings every few minutes. It seems like the second half of the season is so much fun from so many different perspectives because there are always those teams that end up climbing out of third place in their division at the time and coming into first, making playoff runs, and then there are those games over the last few weeks of the season where the team projected to be get the first overall pick ends up getting the sixth pick because they end up winning games because Lovie Smith decides to win at the last minute and stuff like that. So it's so exciting the second half of the season, but man, it is going by a little too fast. And what a week!
Yeah, it really has.
What a week! There were some crazy games this last week. Let's start with the Germany game because that was the first one that was played on Sunday last week. The Chiefs Dolphins, and again, as Alex said, we have full-time jobs, we have other responsibilities. I didn't catch the beginning of that game, and then I tune in, and I mentioned I'm doing a lot of film studies right now, a lot of draft prospect review. And so I turn it on and I see just one of the cleanest routes I've ever seen. I was like, who is, oh yeah, it's Tyreek Hill. Of course, I'm watching the NFL right now. He's just unbelievable. But that game, man, coming down to the wire, the last play of the game, Tua fumbling the ball on the snap, just the most anticlimactic ending to the game that I could possibly think of. What were your thoughts as our Chiefs fan, Alex?
Yeah. Well, it was funny. If you would have watched the first half was all Chiefs. So, I mean, the Chiefs just came out and the defense put an absolute clamp on the Dolphins, and they couldn't do anything. It was impressive. The Chiefs even got a defensive touchdown. I do got to talk about that for a second because the irony of that was pretty incredible. So Tyreek Hill catches like a quick bubble screen, right? And then he starts to try to go outside with it, and Trent McDuffie jumps it and puts basically his whole body into Tyreek Hill's arms. And instead of like Tyreek Hill going down and just trying to take it as a loss, he tries to fight out of it and gets the ball stripped out. Then after that, Mike Edwards picks the ball up, and then he's getting tackled. So then he laterals it back to, let's see, who was it? To Brian Cook, who then runs it for a touchdown, which was an absolutely chaotic play.
Yeah.
But what I want to say, the irony in that made me laugh is that Trent McDuffie, of course, was the Dolphins pick that they traded to the Chiefs for Tyreek Hill, right? And then Cook was another, and then Cook might have even been he was the second round pick, which I think was also, he was either the Chiefs second round or he was also the Dolphins second round pick. So the two main guys on the play both came as a result of the Chiefs moving on from Tyreek Hill. So the irony of that is just pretty incredible. But overall, I think that the Chiefs are once again, they're doing what dominant teams do. They're winning in any way they need to. And this is definitely the best defense that the Chiefs have had during the Patrick Mahomes era, which just makes them all more dangerous. The offense is still rounding into form, but I think every week we're seeing more and more Rashee Rice emerging as that number one receiver. We're starting to see his usage starting to go up, and that's really good to see. And the Chiefs, they're not going to be the same team that used to score 40 points a game, but they don't have to, because their defense is so good this year. They need to score 21 points, or maybe 28, right? And that's pretty much going to beat any team in the NFL for the most part. So impressive win. I was more about the Chiefs defense, I think, than anything. So it was good to see that they travel well.
Yeah, and that pick where they got McDuffie, they also ended up trading up, using that pick in order to get him, which great decision by them. McDuffie is a certified stud at this point. And on the other side, with the Dolphins, they're an interesting team because they either light the world on fire or, they get a little humbled, and they don't seem to be as consistent as sort of expected after their dominating first few weeks of the season. There was that 70-point game against Denver that they put up. And Tyreek Hill, he is on pace for over 2,000 receiving yards. He is well in the conversation for, offensive player of the year. But, he's had, I think, 6 drops on the season. He's had some questionable decision-making here and there. He feels like he has to do everything for the team, which he kind of does. But sometimes I think he does too much. He turns his head before catching it. This guy he shouldn't be dropping the ball like he is. And I wonder if in his mind he's thinking, if I don't do everything, we're going to lose. So just an interesting dynamic there. But, I no doubt in my mind that they're going to still make the playoffs, still go on a run. And, they were my preseason pick to lose the Super Bowl. So I still think that they could get there, but it's going to be tough.
Do you still think they're going to take the division?
I don't know. Let's look.
I think they got a shot because
still there.
Obviously the Jets. I don't think the Jets. The Jets were my pick, but obviously that all changed when Rodgers got hurt. And I just think, man, the Bills look really vulnerable. The Bills, even in the Bills, none of their wins have really been convincing recently. And I know, of course, they, even though they only lost by a score to the Bengals, which I know, not to jump ahead if we want to talk about that game, but that game was not a 1-score game. The Bengals took their foot off the gas, or that would have been worse, honestly. So the Bills, to me, just look very vulnerable right now. And I know that the Dolphins have not, they don't have a win against a team with a winning record yet, but I just got to think that as Ramsey, Ramsey's only been back a game or two, and he's still kind of rounding back into form a little bit. They got some injuries. A-Chain should come back hopefully in a couple weeks. So, I think for the home stretch, if I'm a Dolphins fan, I'm still feeling all right. I'm still feeling like we're in good position to make a real run at the division.
Yeah, and here are their next 5 games, right? They got the Raiders, Jets, Commanders, Titans, and then the Jets again. So
this could be 5 in a row.
You're right. And if they take those 5, even if they, don't win their final games against the Cowboys, Ravens, and Bills to round out the season, that is a very difficult finale to the season. But if they already have 11 wins after these next 5 weeks, they're making the playoffs at a bare minimum, right?
For sure.
So I think after looking at the schedule, I'm still very confident in them winning the division. But the Bills, as we've talked before on this pod, the Josh Allen, the MVP level Josh Allen, or the mid Josh Allen, you never know who you're going to get. And, if Josh Allen is on for any stretch of the season, the Bills can be any team in the league. Mm-hmm. And then if he's not, they don't, and it looks kind of bad. So you never know. But I think the Dolphins take this. All right. Now, I want to jump right into our upset picks from last week because mine was interesting. I'm going to take this away right here because I had the Bucs over the Texans. And if anyone, of course, you guys watch that game. We know our audience. You guys watch that game. CJ Stroud had several seconds left to take him all the way downfield, hit Tank Dell, and it was a very disappointing loss for the Bucks. But the funny thing is Jared, good friend of the pod, he was on one of our earlier episodes to talk about the Steelers. He was next to me. He had some crazy parlay down. He had it was like 5 different Rachaad White metrics, like over on receptions, receiving yards, rushing yards, touchdown, and then the Bucks to win. And White hit all of them. So towards by the end of the third quarter. So we're just sitting next to each other. I'm rooting for my upset pick. He's rooting for this. He put in like $20 to win 275, something like that. So he had 275 on the line, and we're just jumping up and down at the stream. We switched off red zone. We're just watching this game. And the Bucks drive down and score with several seconds left in the game, and right under a minute. And we're just celebrating. We're getting another I've been drinking way too many of these flavored waters, but getting another drink out of the fridge, just yelling, screaming, having a good time. And then the Texans come back, they win, and he just walks out the door. He just leaves and he didn't come back. So a little upset there. Man. He made it home safely, confirmed. But yeah, I did not hit my upset pick last week, although I felt very good about it for a large portion of the game. How about you,
yours
Alex?
was close. Yeah, yours was close. So that takes you to 4-4. So you're still you're still fighting for a playoff spot, Cam. So all good. I, on the other hand, took another loss. I just touched on the game. I picked the Bills over the Bengals, and I've been I think that the last few weeks, obviously the Bengals have really formed. And I still thought that maybe they needed a little bit more time to shake the rust off, but they look great, man. They look dominant. They look like back to the same team that's made a Super Bowl 2 years ago and was, a couple plays away from making the Super Bowl again this last year. So the Bengals are definitely rounded into form. And they're certainly going to be in the mix. And I'm really excited to see their game against the Ravens up here in a couple weeks, because that's going to be some must-watch football. But not to get too far ahead of it. So that's another loss for me, which takes my record to 2-6. So not great at picking upsets.
Well, that's not quite in the running for a playoff spot, but technically still possible.
Going for the first overall pick now. Now we're just going to tank.
Now, the Bengals are looking so much better. Now that Joe Burrow can actually step into his passes starting, I think we were pointing that out about 5
and
weeks
move in
ago
the pocket a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, he can actually hit downfield targets, which completely changes how this offense operates, right? And how the defense has to respond. So they're looking like a very good team. Climbing up. They're 5-3 right now. They started 0-2, right? I believe they started 0-2.
Yep.
And I believe last year, didn't they start 0-2 last year as well?
They did last year too. Yeah. And I think they were even one. I think the Bengals were even 1-3. Yeah. I think they were 1-3, and then they've won 4
they're on a 4-game win streak. So they're on a tear right now, and they are technically last in the division as it stands. They could become first. I mean, I do think the Ravens are a better team, but they are not. I guess their records are tied, right? The Steelers, Browns, and Bengals. So I think the Bengals pull ahead to the second seat and end up taking that playoff spot. But do you think they end up passing the Ravens at all this season?
Man, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, the Bengals are playing so well right now, but so are the Ravens, man. The Ravens are just like curb stomping teams right now, and the Ravens were banged up a little earlier in the year. But what's impressive about the Ravens too, it doesn't seem like Lamar has really had to run that much. He's been able to they've been doing a lot of damage on the ground, through the running backs, and he's been passing the ball at a decent rate. And so at least that's what it looks like to the eye test. And so, what I think makes the Ravens so dynamic is that, if you add in where, I would assume that once it gets late in the season in a big game or a playoff game, then it's like, it's sort of, take all the training wheels off Lamar. I mean, let him run and do his thing. And so I would expect to see them opening up a little bit more of that quarterback run game late in the year. And I think they're saving some stuff, which I don't blame them for. And so I did pick the Ravens to win that division. I still feel good about it, but I do think that the Bengals are going to be right on their heels for much of the year, putting a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like Lamar Jackson hasn't been running. He has 440 rushing yards on the season through 9 games. So he's still leading the league by a good margin. I just looked this up right now. Jalen Hurts is 3rd for rushing yards. Mahomes is 4th. Can you guess who the second place is behind Lamar Jackson for rushing yards at quarterback?
You said
I'd be very surprised.
Hurts is 3rd. You said Hurts is 3rd?
Hurts is 3rd. Yep.
Number 2. Wow, on the spot. I mean, I'm trying to think of is it like Zach Wilson or something?
Joshua Dobbs, man. Dobbs is 2nd in rushing yards on the season so far. I was trying to think of someone who can't pass.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of Josh Dobbs, we have to touch on this game before we hit the next week's slate, because the Minnesota Vikings beat the Atlanta Falcons in such a crazy fashion, with Dobbs getting traded. Now, I listened to Dobbs was talking about the trade this morning, or maybe it was from yesterday, but either way, he was saying that back last week after the Arizona game, he was told, no, you're going to stay as our quarterback. We're going to start you next week. And then he went home and told his agent, and then he went to bed, and then he wakes up with a text from his agent saying, hey, it's trade deadline. You might get traded to either the Browns or the Vikings. And he said, all right. So he went and made breakfast, and by the time he was done eating breakfast, he had been traded to the Vikings. So he said he went, he ended up, he didn't know the playbook. He didn't know his teammates' names.
Yeah, I saw
and he ends
that.
up pulling it out.
Wild,
it's ridiculous. And the Falcons, on the other hand, did you see the 5-minute rant by Arthur Smith in the press conference about Bijan? It's circulating the internet right now. Basically, everyone, you ask him why a player's not getting the ball, and he just starts talking about how he hates fantasy football and people's parlays and how they don't matter and stuff like that. So he went out on for 5 minutes, watch the whole thing about how, he was asked, why isn't Bijan getting the ball? Because then he has like 1 red zone or 1 carry inside the 10 or something ridiculous on the season. That might be wrong, but and he just starts talking about statistics and how he has lots of good players and how he's not doing his job at scoring in the red zone. And he just kept going in circles, and then he just stopped talking. It's like, what are you doing, man? Like, you go on, you say you have talented players and you're not doing your job. Well, maybe use your talented players. I don't know. Right. I don't want to harp on this because it seems like every outlet is right now, but it was weird to watch.
That does seem to be a reoccurring thing, and I know you and I have actually talked about this on our podcast before, but because I also saw Mike McCarthy on the radio, I think it was yesterday. Someone was asking about Brandon Cooks because I guess he's a little bit salty about his usage, and Mike McCarthy's like, I don't play fantasy football. He's like, our entire system is built around the quarterback and making the quarterback successful, and that's what we've been doing for 30 years or something like that. And I was just like, dude. Like, I get it. I understand that your job is to win the game, but you also have to understand that fantasy football is a massive money-generating machine for the league. There is a huge amount of people that watch the games, bet on the games, and are interested in the NFL purely for fantasy football. They do not have a team that they care about. They only care about players on their fantasy team or who they're betting on. And so it's like, I get it, but I don't have to rant back, but it's like, dude, it's partly paying your check, man. Yeah, like, just accept it. You don't have to, no one's asking you to play fantasy football, but just accept that it's part of what generates revenue for the league. That's why the NFL's on top right now. And that's why you're making millions of dollars. So just shut up and ignore it.
And there you go. Coach speak is coaches come out and are asked questions, and then their answers are, we play the best football we can and support our quarterback. Like that, yes. You don't even, why even bother answering the question at that point? I will, from a different perspective, say at least Arthur Smith try to have a response as opposed to just saying we will do our job and play the best of our ability, right? He at least tried to throw out some statistics in there. So that is kudos for that, but there's a lot going on in that organization right now. All right, Alex, any other games you want to touch on before we get into next week?
No, I guess the only other game, I mean, there was some, we don't have to, the Cowboys-Eagles game was a decent game. I think the Cowboys kind of blew it in that game. They had multiple chances to put that game away, and they were unable to do that. But another game that was kind of surprising, I mean, I did think the Ravens would beat the Seahawks, but wow, they really spanked them. I mean, that thing was over after the first quarter. So that was another interesting outcome. Not surprising that the Ravens won, but I think surprising that they really took it to the Seahawks, who I think will be a playoff team. The Seahawks are going to be in the mix in the NFC. They're not an elite team, but they I would say the 49ers should come around and win that division, but the Seahawks, I don't think will be too far behind them, and I think we'll get a chance to be a playoff team in a wild card. So big win for the Ravens.
Yeah, and I do think that the MVP, the likelihood for MVP on this season, I think Mahomes is obviously always in the running, and I think Lamar Jackson is right up there with him at this point. It's hard to picture many other players getting that accolade. And I know we've mentioned before, you have to determine who is the least replaceable human being in the league for MVP, or at least for their team. And you could argue that Tyreek Hill is a lot less replaceable than Tua is, for instance. I think there is no chance that Tyreek Hill gets MVP because he's not a quarterback.
Yep.
But I also think that just that fact says a little bit of something, gives at least a reason why Tua probably will not be in consideration as well. He does have some boneheaded plays here and there still, and his boneheaded plays make you watch him and say, is that guy really in conversation for MVP? So right now, I think it's between Mahomes and Lamar, but they still have a season of football to play.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, Cam. And I mean, AJ Brown's another guy that I'd put there too. I mean, he's having a dominating season as well. But I mean, same thing, right? He'll be in the mix for Offensive Player of the Year, but he's not going to win the MVP.
Yeah. All right, Alex, let's get on to this next week. And what better way to start it off than going over our upset picks? You want to say yours first, or should I take it away?
You take us away.
All right, man. I usually create a short list and spend a few minutes going through them, seeing which I think is best. This week, it was pretty easy for me. I started creating a list, and there's only one I was comfortable with. So thank you for letting me go first. And I will take the Chargers over Detroit. The Chargers are at home this week. It's only a 3-point spread with a nice, healthy 48.5 over under. And Detroit's a talented roster, but so are the Chargers. And at the end of the day, I will take Herbert over Goff any day. And I just think that he can get it done at home in clutch situations. Now, if Detroit gets ahead early, I think Herbert might be prone to making some mistakes trying to catch up. And then Detroit could just sort of run this game, run away with it, quite literally. But I do think that if it's a close game, the Chargers will win, which is not historically what they do, or is it? Do they win close game? What's going on here? They
usually lose.
Okay.
The Charger being chargering, right? If we're going to call that a verb, is to have a ton of talent to be winning a game that you should win, and then inexplicably lose the game at the end. Either by a bad coaching decision or some sort of bad turnover or something, which is usually not Justin Herbert's fault. But that is the act of chargering.
Okay. You know what I think I was thinking of the Vikings last season when they kept winning one-score games.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, I think if the Chargers-Detroit game is close, the Chargers take it. And I do think it's going to be a pretty close game with two pretty talented rosters. Now, I'll give the coaching edge to Detroit, but the talent edge to the Chargers overall.
I like it. That was on my short list. I looked at that and thought about it, but Yeah, and actually, I like the line too. Honestly, like I mean, not just for the upset as well, but I mean, looking at the line on that game, is it 2.5? Is that what it's at now?
I see 3, but
3. Okay.
it could be two and a
I
half.
mean, I think that's pretty good. You know, I'd feel pretty good about that one. Although it is the Chargers, like I said, I got a little hesitant because I was like, are the Chargers going to Charger? You never know. So that's a good pick for I'm really trying desperately to claw my way back towards 500. And at this point, I'm going to put it to the guy that we already talked about once, and that's Josh Dobbs, man. I'm gonna go with Minnesota over New Orleans. I think that I guess the thing that really impresses me about Dobbs is, we already talked about this, but sometimes there's people that whatever profession they're in, they just learn how to make it work. Like they're just handed sometimes. There's people like that, and really, you want those type of people in your organization, right? When you're at work, if you want to have the type of people that you can throw them into a meeting, you can throw them into a project, and they just find a way to learn what they need to know, and they just find a way to make it work. And that's Josh Dobbs. Like he continues to get put in these different situations, and like you said, he didn't even know his teammates' names.
Yeah.
I just wish I could have been in that huddle, because it might have been like, hey, 27, run a post, and hey, you run a drag, who knows? Like, because if he didn't even know the playbook, like, man,
I think he said throughout the game, at least before the end of the fourth quarter, during that last drive, he's saying this, the coaches were explaining some of the plays like while in the huddle, which is just wild.
That's amazing. So anyway, I got to think that, he's going to be even more comfortable this week, and he made that Cardinals team feisty, and they're terrible. And he made them kind of feisty earlier in the year. So all that I got to say, and I still think New Orleans has been up and down. I think overall, I would say they've been underperforming. They really have no excuses to not win that division. But I'm not feeling great about that either. So all in all, long way to say, I think that Minnesota has surprised themselves that they win this game, and like they're in the mix, and that in itself, they're already 5-4. They win this game, they go to 6-4.
Jeez.
This team has no business making the playoffs, but they win this game and they're right there. So, I'm going to ride with them. I think they're going to pull the upset. So I got the Vikings over the Saints.
Yeah. And they're at home too, right? So
yep.
Even better for them. Now,
home dog.
On my short list, I had, the Chargers over Detroit. I had Washington over Seattle as a potential one. And then I just wrote Dobbs time under that. I wanted to, but I couldn't. So I'm glad that you did. I do think, New Orleans right now is a more talented roster, with Justin Jefferson gone there. I see that the Vikings picked up Tanner Morgan to their practice squad, who might just be the backup quarterback. Because when looking at the roster, right, Jaren Hall is out, Nick Mullins, Cousins, they're all on, at least Mullins and Cousins are on IR. Their backup quarterback in the last game was Cam Akers, which is hilarious. And now he's on IR. Poor dude, by the way. Another Achilles tear.
Can't get a break, man.
Yeah, that's his career, right?
Yep.
No, you can't come back from 2 Achilles injuries. It just, feel sorry for the guy. But, I do think the Saints take it, but I love that you took a swing with this pick.
I got to, man. I got to. The ship's sinking.
All right. Now, before we hit on some of these games that haven't been played yet, I know you were very excited about the game last night. Isn't that right? You want to tell us about that?
Well, Cam, I'm sure that you know what label that had we done our show back on Tuesday, the label that I would have given the game that was last night. The dumpster fire game of the week, for sure. So, I did watch it because it was on, not because I was motivated or had any real. And I had DJ Moore playing in fantasy, and that was really going back to fantasy, the thing that kept me the most interested, which also made me be like, just throw him the ball. What, like he's your best player. Just give him the ball. But anyway, so somehow the Bears won, which kind of rubbing salt in the wound is the fact that the Bears have the Panthers pick. So like by And I think that some people forget that, because I heard a different talk show this morning, and they were talking about how the Bears should have lost that game and how it didn't help them. And I was like, dude, what are you talking about? They have the Panthers pick, and the Panthers are going to be worse. So they helped themselves by winning that game. Now you might make the argument they don't want to win a bunch of games the rest of the year. Sure, I understand that. But I mean, that's securing a higher pick for them. So another week of Bryce Young looking lost. Unfortunately, the offense is just a mess in Carolina. Bears are not good, but I guess they're just good enough.
Yeah, and to your point, the Bears traded away their second-round pick to Washington too, and we talked about that a bit last week. But I don't think we hit the Sweat deal because that was more recent. Montez Sweat, $100 million over 4 years, pretty big deal for him. So that is, coming from Washington, good for him. Definitely an overpay. I don't think there are many people who would disagree with that. I understand that they have their cap space and they're probably getting a rookie quarterback this year. So to replace Justin Fields, if they have the first overall pick, right, they'll almost certainly take Caleb Williams. And if they do have that pick, and so they'll have money to spend. So I get it. It just seems pretty rich. So go out, win your games, Bears. You'll get that Panthers pick, and then you don't have your second round pick anyway. So you always try to win as a team. Now, the Panthers, did you hear what they were saying at the end of the game about their decision for Eddie Pinheiro to attempt the 59-yard field goal? First of all,
I mean, they probably thought they had a better chance, though, right, of kicking that than trying to throw a bomb or something.
Yeah, now, Pinheiro is not a long kicker. He does not have a big leg. He struggles over, anything over 50 yards is difficult. And in that stadium, the record is 59 yards. It's hard. It's hard to kick with those temperatures and whatnot.
It's so windy, too.
Yeah. So that decision, it almost seems like you're a coach making the decision by looking at a list of raw statistics and saying, oh, the chances are higher that we make it, as opposed to actually knowing the strengths and weaknesses of your own players. So it does seem like an odd decision, because I think any Carolina fan will tell you that Pinheiro doesn't have a big leg. And so to attempt that just seemed a little odd. I get it. You weren't moving the ball all night. It just shows you don't have faith in your offense. I know it's a statistically low probability that you execute on that 4th and 10, I believe it was, but I think you still got to go for it. If you have Eddie Pinheiro as your kicker, you need to show your offense that you still trust them, which they don't. So, dumpster fire game. Now, if you had to choose another one, because we are recording this on Friday, did you have another dumpster fire game this week, or had you not, or had you committed to the one last night?
Can you hear me now, Cam?
Oh yeah, have you been talking?
There we go. No, I just okay. I think it was kind of breaking up a little bit. I'm not sure if that was just on my end or not, but no, that was my only dumpster fire game. Was just this one this week was the one on Thursday night. So so I'm good there. The game that if we could talk about the game that I'm excited the most about, though, on the other end is going to be the 49ers Jags game. I don't think the primetime games look that great this week. They're a little lacking in that department, but some of the 1 o'clock slates might even be the best slate. You got the Browns Ravens, which I think that's going to be a good game. And then the 49ers Jaguars. I think that's going to be a good game too. So the Jags have been playing really well. I think this will be a tough game to pick. San Francisco's favored right now by 3. But the Jags are feisty. But the Niners, man, they want to get back in that win column badly. They're coming off of a bye, getting a little bit healthy. I'm not sure. I haven't heard if Trent Richardson's Trent Williams. Yeah, not Trent Richardson.
No,
he's at home on the couch.
Play.
But Trent Williams, I'm not sure if he's going to play or not. But I know they're trying to get him back, trying to get Debo back pretty soon. So But I think overall, I'm excited about that game. I think that's really going to be a great game.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild that the Jaguars are on a 5-game win streak. The San Francisco 49ers are on a 3-game losing streak, and they're still favored to win this game. I mean, that speaks volumes to the perception of these teams. And I fully agree. I thought it was surprising that it was only a 3-point spread. Honestly, the Jaguars were not in my consideration or in consideration for my upset pick. So I think the 49ers take this despite being on a losing streak against a team on the biggest winning streak in the NFL right now. But it'll be a very exciting game. Now, you said that you don't think the primetime games will be that exciting. I will say that I bet you have no idea what's going to happen in the Jets-Raiders game. Like, no one has any earthly idea what's going to happen. There will be sacks all over the place, picks. The Raiders don't even have a great defense, but they do have Max Crosby, and that makes it fun to watch just all by itself. So, and he never comes off the field, man. You're supposed to rotate your defensive line. I think he played 100% of snaps last game, and he's just.
I mean, yeah, he's a nightmare,
he's a monster. Man. Yeah, he's performing at a high level every snap. It's crazy. Yep. He could be the defensive player of the year when all.
I think he should, man. I think he should. I think this is a good year for him to win that. Honestly.
Well, who else is in the conversation for that? Definitely Dexter Lawrence. You can say Myles Garrett. You could say, has Micah Parsons been doing stuff lately? He's just Micah Parsons.
Not as much, yeah. I mean, you have TJ Watt. Yeah, TJ Watt's in the mix, probably.
Always. And Bosa, right?
Bosa.
So, again, as we said earlier, the full, we got the second half of the season left to play. But these dudes are all in the conversation.
Yep. So what games? So other than the Jets-Raiders game, what other games are you looking forward to this weekend?
I'm looking forward to the Commanders-Seahawks unit. The Seahawks just got thrashed by the Ravens, and Sam Howell he's looked good. He's looking better each week. He's making big plays. Yes, he's still effectively a rookie, right? I know he's in his second year, but it's still his first season starting, and he's showing everything you could possibly want. And if we end up cleaning house, we being the Commanders, I want Sam Howell to have shown enough to where anyone new coming in says, you know what, let's give him another year and just put more talent around him, especially on the offensive line. Because, they sold off their defensive ends, right? Both former first-round picks, Sweat and Young. And a lot of people say, all right, you're in full tank mode. I saw a lot of people saying full tank mode recently, which if you can spend your cap space, which they have a significant amount of room to work this offseason, on offensive linemen and draft well, I don't think you'll need to have a 3-year rebuild. I think it could be 1 or 2 years. So definitely not going to compete this year. I don't think they're going to compete next year unless they have some absolute genius offseason moves and get lucky with some draft picks. But I think 2 years is reasonable. And if you get rid of Sam Howell right now, I think that window lengthens. So I'm looking forward to watching him against a defense that I don't think is a stellar defense, but they have a good secondary. So seeing how he can navigate that will be exciting for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with your points on, there, Cam. And another thing, I mean, I would be encouraged with Sam Howell. Like I've seen enough that I've seen, he clearly he's got the arm strength, he has the accuracy. And I think considered how bad the offensive line has played and how much pressure he's been under, the fact that he's actually kept the boat afloat. I mean, most of these losses aren't because Sam Howell's played terrible. They've had a couple games. I know that Bills game was pretty ugly, and they've had a few other ones. But honestly, Sam Howell, I think, has been one of the bright spots, on this team. And so, I would feel good that if they could build through the draft, maybe help through free agency and get the offensive line fixed. I think that Sam Howell really has a shot to I don't think he's going to be elite. I'm not thinking top 10, but he could certainly be in the top half of quarterbacks in the league. He may already be there, all right, with such a bad offensive line. So, I think that I definitely think if they can get him some help on the offensive line, I'd be encouraged with, his future, honestly.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call him a top half right now, top half quarterback, but I do see the potential. And I just wanted to say real quick before moving on from this game that Jonathan Allen last week. Now, players aren't going to say anything bad about their quarterback, but he came out and said with some conviction, it seemed that, he's played with a lot of quarterbacks, playing in Washington for so long, one tends to do that. Played with a lot of quarterbacks, played against a lot of good quarterbacks, and said Sam Howell is talented. He's a dude and has the support of the locker room 100%. He's the guy for the next 5-10 years. That's what he said. So, he could just say that he's great and we support him, but no, it seemed like he went a little extra step to where it seemed genuine. So, I watched that clip about 13 times just for a little bit of, to feel something.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's exciting.
Another question for you while we're talking Commanders, just real quick. Do you think we see a better version of Chase the second half of the season here now that he's a 49er?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that he fits well into both schemes, right? They have pretty similar methods of working the front. I think that San Francisco does a better job at sort of scheming pressure than Washington does. I think Jack Del Rio was just saying go. It didn't really seem like there was anything else up until this last week where the defensive linemen were actually not just trying to be on an island and win. So I think that he's been racking up pressures without getting a ton of sacks. His conversion rate's been a little bit lower. And I think that in San Francisco, they're just that much better at it to where he will start converting a bit more. Now, I won't say he is around more talent, especially with Bosa on the opposite side, but you can't really say he was around that much more talent, right? Just strictly along the offensive front. I mean, Montez Sweat, right? Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. It's underperforming for what they should be or what they could be, but there's still a group of dudes across the front. So I think that I hope he succeeds over there. I always liked him. He threw some shade on the organization, which I did not like too much. I don't know if you heard him say that, basically saying I can tell I'm with winners now. It's a lot different than it was.
Yeah.
All right, man. You don't have to say that part out loud, but it's all the best to him. I do think he has a strong second half of the season.
Magic Johnson disagrees, right?
Right. All right, man. Any other games you want to touch on this week?
I will say just one other game that, I saw that I think has a chance to be a sneaky good game. Is going to be the Texans and Bengals.
Yes,
I know we just talked a little bit about that Texans Bucks game last week, and we also touched on the Bengals. Now this is a line I would probably stay away from. So we got the Bengals by 6.5. I mean, they are at home, so like I understand the line. And who knows? I mean, like we said, the Bengals, man, they're playing really well. But man, this Texans team, they believe, I mean, they had that one weird game where they did lose to the Panthers, but it happens. I mean, the Chiefs lost to the Broncos last week, so you never know, right? Any given Sunday.
Yeah.
So they did have that weird, but other than that, I mean, they've been in pretty much every game, and CJ Stroud every week looks better and better. I think he's pretty much a lock for Rookie of the Year, in my mind. So man, I think that could be a sneaky good game. I think the Bengals got to be ready to play because I think the Texans are going to show up. And I really do think that CJ Stroud's not afraid of anything. He's going to let it loose and anything can happen. So if the Bengals aren't ready to play, I think this could be a sneaky good game.
Yeah. Now I think, Stroud is absolutely a lock, as you said, for Rookie of the Year. I think if Puka Nacua breaks Justin Jefferson's rookie record, it won't matter at all because it'll still be Stroud because Stroud's a quarterback. Puka
Yeah,
Nacua
right.
is not. So I think this will be a very exciting game. It is possible that the better team shows up in Cincinnati and just puts on a clinic against the overall less talented Houston, but their receivers are really, really coming. They've really been stepping up. The Houston's, that is, Tank Dell he's been great, and there's been talk about how CJ Stroud specifically asked to draft Tank Dell, which is kind of interesting. He also keeps pointing out certain. There's some jokes going around that he's going to quit and become a scout because keeps talking about, I would never draft a quarterback when I don't talk to their teammates and see how they do this and this. Like, okay, man, you're a rookie. Just pump the brakes. I get it. You're excited, but I hope he does well. And something else about Stroud, I don't recall if we've ever talked about it on this pod, but the S2 cognition test was huge this offseason. It's used basically like a much better Wonderlic that actually has applicable attributes. We can talk about it more on another pod if anyone's interested in hearing about the S2 cognition test. It is pretty cool, but there was a stat saying basically no starting quarterback in the NFL has ever scored under a 50% any successful quarterback. And it's a really good predictor of success, and that Brock Purdy did really well and all these quarterbacks did well. And then CJ Stroud scored an 18% allegedly. And they're saying, that means he's a bust. And then he comes out and is lighting it on fire. So not good PR for the S2 team, but I do think it's another data point that, you can never buy into an off-field test 100%, but I do like what I've seen from it overall based on the knowledge I have of it. But yeah, it's never going to be perfect.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, Cam. And like you said, I think that's a good way to look at it as a data point because, when you think about even taking a test, I mean, it can certainly reflect some aspects of your processing and like problem solving and all that. But also football is what makes the game so fun is it's such a balance of, being prepared and studying, but also just instincts, right? Like, because you can draw the play up, right? And know the play and know exactly what you're trying to do. But as soon as Nick Bosa destroys your right tackle and is like right in your face, like then it's instincts, right? Are you going to try to juke him? You're going to try to throw it? Like, what are you going to do? And it's those off. And that happens almost every play, right? And so, it's amazing how it's just such like the most successful quarterbacks, and I mean, of course, I'm biased, but thinking about the way that Mahomes approaches it, right? He studies it. He's a film junkie, and he knows what Coach Reed wants to do. He knows how to exploit the defense, but then within the play, he also understands sometimes he's just got to make something happen. And the play doesn't always go like it's supposed to go. So that's why sometimes Kelsey just runs a completely different route. And then Mahomes runs around for a while and instinctively knows it's not like when he sees it, it's not like he's processing to say, oh, well, Coach Reed told me I should do this. Like he's just like Kelsey's open. I'm going to get the ball to him. Right. And I think it's just anyway. So long little mini rant to say that that's cool. And that's definitely something that I think data point to be taken into consideration. And I think that's just one of the things that makes football great. It's such a wonderful balance of preparatory strategy and instinctful play.
Yeah. And it's, again, you say it's a data point, just like the combine, right? You don't go to the combine and see someone run a 4.2 and say, I'll draft Tyquan Thornton in the second round. Well, maybe the Patriots will, but also to your point about Mahomes, Kelsey makes it a lot easier for him when he just points to the open players. Like you did.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That was awesome. I loved that. But so it should be a good game. But the Bengals, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals end up winning by over 3 touchdowns either. Now, one last game I just wanted to bring up. I usually like watching games that have, lesser teams with lower win records, because they're not as refined. They're more exciting. But one game I'm not looking forward to this week, and probably the first time I'll say this entire season, is it's in Germany, I believe, the Colts Patriots. It's just not a game. I've never, over the last 5 years, the Colts have been one of what I think the most boring teams to watch. They just they just haven't been exciting. Now Anthony Richardson completely changed that.
Right.
And
then
I
he
love
got hurt.
Gardner Minshew. Exactly. But just the Patriots this year, they're not fun to watch because a lot of these worst teams, they'll try things and they'll have some big plays and there will be broken coverages. But these teams, it's like their defenses are good. Their offenses aren't. All right. I guess go to Germany. Just send them over there. So I'll watch it, but it's not going to be my favorite game this week. But
yeah, no, I'm with you there. That one doesn't exactly, that's not exactly one that could, exciting to get up for. There's also a couple games that, I don't, just to touch on them for just a minute. I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat. Like, I'm not really that excited to see the Titans Bucks. I don't know, maybe a couple Derrick Henry stiff arms, that's always fun. But, and I think the Packers Steelers, it's like, okay, maybe. And then even the Falcons and the Cardinals, the only thing that could be interesting about that is with Kyler Murray's return, that probably will have me tune in just because I really like most people. So that's the reason.
You're cutting out there, man.
And that the rest,
just letting you know.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, you're back. You're back.
Okay. And I was just going to be the game is seeing Kyler Murray's return. It looks like.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I will say there have been a lot of complaints about this week's slate of games. There are a lot of evenly matched teams across the board. That they should be at least a lot of tighter scoring games. All right, man. Now, last week I had said that I wanted to touch on a couple draft risers that I've seen recently. Any other games you want to cover, or do you want me to hop into that?
No, man. Let's hit it.
All right. So I've been absolutely grinding the trenches tape over this last month, just hitting all the defensive and offensive linemen that I can. When I get in a groove with a position, I like sticking with it because it's a lot easier to know what to look for when you're doing it over and over again. But it can get a little tiresome after watching like 5 guys straight at the same position. So bouncing back and forth between the offensive and defensive line gives me a chance to really look at both over these last few weeks. And I want to bring up a few guys who have risen a lot over the last month of football or so. A couple of these guys weren't even on my initial big board I put out at the end of October, which was just, about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. And I've seen them recently when I get to these guys, further down on my list. And I realized, wait, these guys, they're day 2 prospects. So I want to start, I want to bring to light 2 offensive linemen and 2 defensive linemen whose names you'll probably start to hear more and more. Now, this first one, very obvious because I'd say he started rising about a month ago, and I've talked about him on this pod as well. But Talisa Fuaga, I just have to shout him out once again. Right tackle. He has cemented himself as a top 10 player on my board unless something changes drastically. He went against UCLA where he fought against Laiatu Latu and Gabriel Murphy. Didn't allow a single pressure, especially to Latu, who is really the most technically refined defensive end in the draft. He's a stud. He's going to be great at the next level as well. Probably top 10, top 15 pick unless some medical issues with his neck come back up, but he's looking like a stud. So Talisa Fuaga just handled him. He didn't allow any pressures. And, there was one play against Gabriel Murphy where it looked like he might have allowed a pressure, but the quarterback completely rolled out of a clean pocket. And it was just completely unnecessarily. So one of the best games I've seen from him. And he's probably the best run blocking offensive tackle in this class, in my opinion. I know there are guys like Jordan Morgan who will give him a run for his money, especially on some outside zone and some gap. But regarding inside zone runs, at least Fuaga's footwork and his positioning and ability to just create a gap by himself, just like that, it's extremely impressive. And he wasn't even on my radar going into this season. So I've had a lot of fun watching him. That UCLA game really solidified his ranking. Now, the next guy, this guy I only started watching because he flew up Trevor Sikkema's board, head PFF draft analyst, and that's Jackson Powers Johnson, who's a center for Oregon. I have him with the mid-second round grade right now, which seems kind of nuts because he is, I believe, ranked 211 currently on Mock Draft Database. But he is a bigger center. He played guard last year. He's a true junior. And his EFF, which is sort of his pass blocking efficiency, essentially the pressures allowed over the number of snaps that he's taken. He's allowed 4 pressures in his career, only 1 this season. EFF of 99.6, I believe that is. So this dude is a great pass protector. You can't really run through him at 6'3", 320, 320 pounds at center. Big boy. And I think he'll play either guard or center at the next level. He's also great on A-gap runs and inside zone. He's a finisher in the run game. Now, he might not be the best out on the move, so I don't think he will fit in every scheme. But right now, I have him above Van Pran as my top center. I still need to get to a few other guys in the position to watch Van Pran's latest games. But I was very excited when I started watching him earlier this week. Now, on the defensive line, a couple guys who are really rising up. First one I want to talk about is Gabriel Murphy, who I just mentioned for UCLA against Fuaga. Now, Murphy plays across from Latu. Latu's a stud. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. But Murphy is very technically refined. He's not a star athlete, but I currently have a mid-third round grade on him. He has very active hands. He has a lot of different pass rush moves that he executes well. And that speaks volumes to what they're teaching the defensive line over at UCLA, because he's not their only, those aren't their only 2 edge prospects who are going to be considered in this year's draft. They have at least one other guy as well who I need to get to, but he's been impressive. Again, mid-third grade on him, but on Mock Draft Database right now, he's currently sitting at 147. I do think he ends up rising more when people start actually watching him and not just Latu across from him. And then the last guy I want to bring up, this guy, I don't even know how I found he was just lower on my tier list, and I got to him. Howard Cross, the third defensive tackle from Notre Dame. I'm not as comfortable with this ranking because of his physical stature, but I also have a mid-third round grade on him right now. Now, he's 6 feet tall, and he is 288 pounds. So he is stout for 6 feet tall, and somehow he just flies off the line. He has an incredible first step. He starts penetrating the line before the quarterback catches the snap. It's crazy how someone who's 6 feet tall, 288 can just fly off the line like that. And he gets natural leverage because he is only 6 feet tall. So his arms go up immediately under the offensive lineman, and he has very quick hands. So he's winning a lot of pass rush reps at the college level. I think that will definitely be lower at the NFL level, but I think he could play 3-tech. I think he could play 3-4 base end in certain situations, and even 4-3 strong side and sort of pocket collapsing pass rush power specialist, if you will. So he doesn't really have an anchor at 288. He can anchor. He can hold his ground if he has an excessive forward lean, which he does throughout a few reps, but that gets him very susceptible of going off balance. I haven't seen it exploited as much in college, but it definitely would be in the pros. So I want to keep my eye out on him, see how he performs over the remainder of the season, because I think that he is a unique prospect who could end up making his way into day 2. So not a stud, not a first round guy, but some of these gems that you find just sort of down the rankings and end up giving them day 2 grades. They're always even more fun to find than some of these, watching these Marvin Harrison Juniors and Malik Neighbors kind of prospects who are just everyone has them in the first round. So those are 4 guys I wanted to point out. Last week I said I'd bring some guys to light, and I'm definitely going to start doing this a bit more as the season progresses. I'm hoping to get to finish up the trenches here in a couple of weeks and start getting more into receivers and defensive backs. So it's been a lot of fun at this point. Alex, how are you doing? You know any of these guys?
I do now.
Nice. Perfect.
No, that's awesome, Cam. Thank you for breaking that down. It'll be exciting to kind of revisit some of these names, as we get a little bit closer to, keep an eye on your draft board as we wrap the season up. Cause the teams are working on it all year round. The scouts, they're already taking a look at it. They're already starting to prep and watch these games closely, visit these games and all that. Hopefully not steal any signs while they're visiting the games. Oh wait, sorry. Is that only Michigan? Or maybe not. Anyway, this is mainly an NFL podcast. We'll leave the Big Ten drama to the college football podcast. But either way, this has been a lot of fun, Cam. It's been a lot of fun. It was good to catch up with you. It's fun to spend a Friday night together. And we certainly appreciate everybody that supports our show. And as you've heard us say, and the best way you can do that is by liking, subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, commenting, all that stuff helps us. And of course, we want to, we enjoy talking football and enjoy the community that we're working on building. So thanks everybody for being a part of it. And we're certainly, appreciative of your time.
Yeah. And we love fan engagement. So if you want anything from us, want any specific content, even want to come on our show and talk about your team, drop a comment in the YouTube section or even reach out to us. We are very happy to get back to you, and we'll definitely reply at a minimum. So, if there's anything you want to talk about, anything you love from the show, agree with takes you might disagree with that we have, we tend to agree quite a bit just by default. We don't talk about this throughout the week, but we kind of have similar takes on a lot of NFL content. So if you have anything
except upset picks, Cam, you're better at those than me, clearly.
So far. Still got half the season. You can come back.
That's right.
So, all right, guys. Again, thanks for tuning in this week. Have a fun weekend watching football, and we will see you next week. Peace.
See you later, everybody. Peace.